Hey there, this is Jen T. Grace, founder and CEO of Publish Your Purpose, and I am here with Chris today to talk about your new book, Broken, Brave, and Bittersweet. How are you doing, Chris?
I am good. How are you?
Oh, I am doing great, and I'm always even better when I get to have a conversation like this, where we can kind of celebrate and talk on the other side of your book having come out, because it is such a process to make this happen, as you know.
Yes, yes. I know people have referred to it like giving birth, and it
Mm-hmm.
is very much like giving birth. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
like a 5-year gestation period. So I was ready to pop,
Yep.
and it has popped out.
And here we are. Yeah, and so it's a new release, and you have, yes, please show our visual.
I love the cover. I think the cover ended up really turning out very well. It's hard to tell what the colors are like, but it's a very pretty teal, and
Yeah,
yeah, I love the cover design.
I think it came out fantastic. So it is a memoir, and it's called Broken, Brave, and Bittersweet. So can you just maybe share a little bit about your background, and then I would love to kind of talk a little bit about how the title itself came to be.
Sure. So from professionally speaking, my background is that I have a bachelor's degree in education, master's degree in both theology and social work, and I worked for about well about 20 years in the human services field. And then we adopted our children. While I got married, we adopted our children, and then I ended up having an accident, and then I decided that I couldn't go back to social work in the same capacity that I was used to because I was working in the inner city. And so that I have a clinical pastoral education, did some clinical pastoral education work to become interfaith hospital chaplain. And that all kind of factors into the book. Yeah. Some of the
Yeah.
learnings that I've had, and some of my parenting experience, and the accident that I sustained. And that's kind of the nutshell.
Yeah, yeah, and that is such a succinct, abridged version. Obviously, there's an entire book to read that goes into all of the details on all of these things. But how can we just talk a little bit about, because it's Broken, Brave, and Bittersweet. And so I want to just kind of, if you can summarize the book and how collectively we ended up with this title, because I feel like it's just kind of interesting how this order of words kind of came to be.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. The book initially had a totally different title. It was called Full Catastrophe Parenting because I was encouraged to write a lot about our parenting, our adoptive parenting experience. And then before too long, I was like, this isn't what feeds my soul, is talking about parenting, parenting, parenting. And my kids were getting older, and now they're teenagers, and my daughter's graduating high school. And I thought, if this is going to have any sustainability to my soul, to my heart, it's going to have to change titles. And because the parenting experience that I was going through does factor into my accident, and my body did become broken, some of the learnings that arose from my experience were bittersweet. I mean, there was some positive that actually came. I mean, I learned a lot about life just in general from going through my recovery, and then looking back at my children's experience, particularly my son, who had failure to thrive, and he had a lot of orphanage neglect. And there were a lot of learnings that came up that came into my decision to change the title. And yeah, and you know what? I also read Susan Cain's book Bittersweet, which I highly recommend. It was really good. And as I read through that, actually last summer, which is interesting because I ended the book with a conversation my daughter and I had. It was like an argument that we had because people had been asking, like, how does your daughter factor into the story? You talk a lot about your son, but my daughter was like, you know, there were issues that came up about her adoption, and I was like, that has to go in the story because that's very much a part of our experience, and it wouldn't have been in the book if it hadn't been published a year ago with the previous title.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that all kind of came into like, okay, I really like the idea that this whole experience has been very bittersweet. It hasn't been the happy ending, which, right? That's not life, right? Not reality. It's not the Hollywood thing, the Hollywood experience.
Yeah.
Um, but there's been a lot of really good learnings that have come up out of it. And, our whole family has gone through a trauma,
Mhm.
and we had to put the whole experience into the book. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers the question.
Yeah, it does, specifically because I was thinking about like what the original title was and how it's a far departure because I feel like something that was originally called that would have felt just different. And I feel like this is it's a beautiful title. It is a beautiful cover. Everything kind of has this beautiful balance, I feel like, of kind of color and imagery to it. And so, yeah, it's because there is that kind of bittersweet piece to all of it. And I feel like not enough people openly talk about that, right? Especially when we're talking about bittersweet in relation to parenting, for example, as just one kind of piece. Because your memoir in particular has a lot of themes and a lot of kind of through lines and threads, and not all memoirs do. Some of them are very like, this is a book about this, and yours very much kind of blends into a lot of different areas, which I think is good because it shows people a full kind of 360-degree view of what life looks like.
Yes. And that was why it was hard to write,
Mhm.
because like I couldn't tell just the parenting part, and
Mhm.
I couldn't not talk about the accident that I had,
Mhm.
and I couldn't not talk about the learnings that came up out of, just being an interfaith hospital chaplain and talking to
Mhm.
people who had, really difficult life experiences as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think, I like that you said that that you see some balance, because someone was mentioning a few years ago, she said, Chris, I feel like so much of what you talk about has these two, like there are the two ends of the spectrum that you kind of visit, the positives and the negatives, and then you kind of pull them together, you weave them
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
And as I went through each iteration and each edit with like the 5 different people who had their hands in the book that were giving me suggestions
Yeah.
and stuff, I was like, okay, I think it's time. I think,
Mhm.
the birth of this book, time wise,
Yeah.
it's now. So
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm curious because you did say you had a 5-year gestation period, so there's that. Since it's been out, which has only been for, really like a couple of solid weeks here,
mhm.
has anyone said anything to you that has surprised you, or have you gotten any feedback that has just really validated why you did this? Like what's the I guess the feedback been so far?
Yeah. Well, honestly, like I have these different camps that I speak to. So there hasn't been too much feedback in regard to the whole parenting part, which I guess doesn't surprise me. I guess what it does is it validates the change that I did make, that it
Mhm.
is not just about parenting.
Mhm.
Because people have a lot of folks who kind of followed my story after my climbing accident had an interest in, like, so now how's life shaken out for you?
Mhm.
And of course, life is shaken out in ways that are great in some aspects, and we're still dealing with struggles in some other
Mhm.
aspects. So so the feedback has been like that, it's been very honest, gritty, and people really appreciate that
Mhm.
I'm not like hiding I'm not portraying the hero image, like, everything is wonderful now, because that's just not how life is.
Mhm.
I mean, and being an amputee, which there's a lot of us in that are walking this earth, a lot of folks who've been through trauma of one sort or another, a lot
Mhm.
of people in the limb loss community. There are a lot of stories of overcoming, and people who do triathlons and climb mountains and all that stuff. And even when we were coming up with the idea for the cover design, oh yeah, and a lot of people like the cover design, by the way.
Yeah.
This picture as that was actually me, and the cover designer so nicely was able to do a silhouette. And I said, I want her kind of on the mount, like on the journey going up the mountain, if
Mhm.
possible. And we just had a hard time coming up with an image for that. So I said, okay, as long as there's a backpack with a foot sticking out of it, because I usually have to carry an additional foot. And there's a story in the book toward the end where we're climbing up one of the Colorado 14ers with my family, and my husband had to carry my pack. So it's just the idea that, the journey is never done, and you're
Mhm.
carrying a lot of extra baggage, and it might be an
Mhm.
extra appendage, but Anyway, you know,
Yeah.
so I'm getting a lot of positive feedback about the cover design, about the honesty, about the. A lot of people are saying it's well written, which to me as a writer makes me feel
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
A couple people were like, it's such a page turner, I couldn't put it down. So
Mhm.
that was good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not surprised by any of that feedback, obviously, having been along the journey with you. And I know, especially to be complimented on your writing, I think that really is a big deal because you are a regular contributor to Psychology Today. And I feel like that is also a big deal, right? Because I feel like it's not anyone just can write for Psychology Today, for example. So what, do you think that you're ongoing and you're a guest writer in other kind of other formats and for other people and other things that you're doing because you are connected to, as you were saying before, there's kind of like a Venn diagram, if you will, of like just different communities that your book kind of overlaps all of them. Do you think any of that other writing kind of prepared you for the writing of this book?
Yeah. So I also write for Amplitude Magazine, Living with Amplitude Magazine, which is an amputee specific one. And and it's really kind of interesting because I've interviewed other amputees in the community and I've made really good connections with folks that and they're continuing to happen, which is wonderful, which is another reason why I decided to like change the title and not just speak to parenthood. Because I've met amazing people in all of these different areas. Like I've met folks through the reactive attachment disorder community and in the limb loss and trauma survivor community. So yeah, I think writing for these other entities has been really helpful. Just the people who have also like kind of read the things that I've talked about and said thank you, because we just we hear a lot of the success stories of the folks who do the amazing things, and really getting through parenthood is an amazing thing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
parenting a challenging kid is hard, and parenting any children is hard. Just I don't know. Sometimes it's the ordinary things that we need to be validated about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I
Mm-hmm.
talk a lot about the ordinary life experiences, but I
Yeah.
might write about them in ways that people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me happy. That's what that is what my intention was.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to feel seen and validated.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's interesting of how all of these topics are woven together, and again, to further validate just the change in title, is that someone who might be in the climbing community might just want to read this because they know you or they're interested in a story with someone that has something to do with climbing. And by bringing them in that channel, they're also being exposed to challenging parenting situations or the limb loss community or, or reactive attachment or mental health broadly. So it's kind of cool that you kind of give that exposure for anyone. So if someone's coming in because they're like, oh, this is a book that has reactive attachment in it, I don't see many books about that, let me see. And now you've exposed them to climbing community and limb loss community. And so like there's just this really cool balance because it's not just a book that you have to be interested in this one topic to want to read, because there are very clear different topics in there that do make sense and are cohesive. Because occasionally there's a book that has everything in the kitchen sink included in it, and you're like, okay, I have no idea what the author is doing here. Like where are they taking me? What is the goal? They have no idea. But whereas yours, like there's just such an intentionality behind it, and it's so clear. So it's great to already kind of hear the feedback that's coming in such a short period of time of it being out.
Well, yeah, thank you. And it's interesting because I did a launch event at our gym on Sunday actually, and there were three of us with adoption experience that had this conversation around my table about the complexity of this topic. And it was just a really nice organic conversation. And I thought, I love this. This is what I was hoping was going to happen. And that was just like three people around a table. It just like happened to be. And I do kind of think that the universe helps us to kind of further along these types of experiences where, if you're meant to connect with people that share your experience or who need to hear your story, that's going to happen. And that's sort of where I'm taking this experience of this post-launch and I'm just kind of waiting to see where it takes me and
Mhm.
where things go, because there are a lot of different avenues that this could go,
Mhm.
and my family does factor into it too, which is kind of exciting, you know. I
Mhm.
mean, they helped. It was funny. I asked them before I had the book published. I wanted to make sure that if we made any name changes, if
Mhm.
they were not comfortable with my sharing of their story, I wanted
Mhm.
them to be able to state that.
Absolutely.
And they both read the whole entire manuscript over Christmas vacation,
Mhm.
and they both said, no, I mean, this is our story. We think it's important to talk about these things.
Yeah.
My son was actually tearful, and
Mhm.
because I talked quite a bit about his failure to thrive and his malnutrition and his neglect from his orphanage, because I mean, he doesn't have any recollection of that.
Mhm.
And he said, I forget this.
Mhm.
And but I'm proud, and I don't want you to change my name. I think,
Yeah.
I want people to know I'm a real person. And now, granted, there were some shenanigans that happened that same exact. I talk about this that very weekend. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just so impressed with how this touched him. And then I caught him involved in some computer shenanigans that evening, and I was like, see, this is how it is.
Balance.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Just to keep you humble. You
Yep.
know, there's
Yeah.
no turning the corner.
Mhm. I think it's good though that you included your family in that conversation because I've certainly worked with my fair share of authors, and when you're writing a memoir there's always some kind of carnage. Like, it's kind of the nature of memoir, and it's a matter of how intense, and how deeply might that affect somebody else. And it's our job as the author to really think through those considerations of, if I do write about this, what is my story to share versus what is that person's story to share, and finding that balance. And so I think it's always good when an author is willing to share it with their family in advance, being like, listen, not to say that you're giving them full veto power, but you're giving them some control in the conversation to be able to give you some direction in areas that they might not feel comfortable. And I feel like that is just a very kind of brave thing to do, because it could implode, right? Like, it could open up a Pandora's box that you then can no longer control. But it sounds like the way that you approached it came out fantastic, and it makes for a better product in the end.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I'm glad I waited, as hard as these 5 years have been. I'm glad I've sort of backed off and let it simmer for a while, and then,
Mhm.
picked it back up again and read it again, and thought, I'm going to take this part out because, my children have matured, and
Mhm.
I've been able to have the perspective of
Mhm.
having lived through, whatever the hardship that we went through at the time, and then I could write about it from a different perspective,
Mhm.
and that's been helpful. But I want to give hope to parents too, that
Mhm.
it's going to be hard, like, but just hang in there, and you might not see the results of your hard work, um, but around the or like, there are some people in this rad parent community who, their kids, are really having a hard time, like, worse off than what we went
Mhm.
through. But still, the fact that, like, my accident happened, and there have been parents in the rad parent community that learned about what happened to me, and they're like, I could totally see that happening to me.
Mhm.
I could totally see forgetting, or getting in a car accident because I'm
Mhm.
overwhelmed, or
Mhm.
doing something, some bonehead move because I'm
Mhm.
a stressed out parent. And I'm like, yes, I see you, I get you,
Mhm.
I want you to feel understood. So
Mhm.
yeah, and same with, moms in chronic pain, like, because I still have some residual chronic pain after my accident. And I wrote for Psychology Today right before Mother's Day, to the mom in pain, I see you. It, it's hard to kind of keep going when you have an invisible disability, or, I have a leg amputation, but honestly, some of the chronic pain stuff is what people don't see. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, yeah, that all is kind of
Mhm.
woven through the book.
Yeah. And so if you could fast forward in time to, like, just even a year from now, what are you hoping that you might be doing as a result of putting this work out into the world?
Yeah. So my target I guess, target audiences or target populations are parents of kids with special needs or adoptive parents, or, parents of kids with reactive attachment disorder, folks with disabilities, or like amputations or any kind of chronic health conditions, and healthcare professionals. And I'm really hoping to have a conversation with all these different communities about like the human experience that we all kind of go through. And I think with social media, we see a lot of highlight reels, and particularly in the amputee community, there are people, like I said earlier, doing all these wonderful things, and like I see the person who maybe just hasn't been able to get a leg for whatever reason because they're still healing, and they're bordering on depression, and so I'm hoping to be able to to speak to organizations and communities of people that work with all these different populations. So healthcare communities, parent conferences, or maybe adoptive conferences, that kind of thing. There's my husband and I are going to be starting a podcast as well.
Nice.
We're still thinking about the name. We did have one that was Full Catastrophe Parenting before, and there were a lot of people interested in it, but for the same reasons that I didn't want to write the book with that title, we backed off. So we're going to reinstitute our podcast, or focusing on life with challenges. So there's some ideas, but I'll put that on our website.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to write for these different entities, just kind of getting the word out about the book, and the perspective that I can lend to these different areas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like the sky's the limit, and because I just feel like, again, you have just so many different topics that really kind of overlap with each other, and just continuing to be that beacon of hope for folks, and regardless of what type of situation that they're headed in. So I'm thrilled to hear that you were starting your own podcast, because I know that you do other, you're guest on podcast often, as we were talking about before. You do a lot of guest writing. So I think if anyone's just kind of picking up anything of what you're saying, and they're like, I wonder if Chris would be willing to be a guest on my show, or would write something for my people, or whatever it might be, I feel like that's something that you are very open to. So I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, and what I've been telling everybody who like comes to my launch events or connects on social media or whatever is like, I'm a very extroverted person. So, and writing is kind of an introverted, secluded type of endeavor. So, and I haven't been on social for as much over the past like couple of years, because I've been trying to get the book done, and try to work a day job, and get the other deadlines met with my writing and other things. So yeah, I mean, this is just, I'm able to step back and take a deep breath, and kind of ready for whatever comes next. And it's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I did put your website along the bottom of the screen, so if anyone is watching and they want to check it out, your all of your information is also linked in the description below this video, wherever someone might be watching it. So that is an option as well. And so for anyone who is interested in checking out the book is available wherever you'd like to purchase a book. My personal favorite is bookshop.org, which is a online independent bookstore that is also a certified B Corp, which just means they have a commitment to sustainability, environmentally friendly practices, socially responsible practices. And so it's something that a status that PYP also holds. So I try to do my best to encourage folks to purchase books through them. And then, if you're an Amazon user, it's all available on Amazon too. Trying to just slowly move the needle to going to your local bookstore. And so if you do have a bookstore in your area and you want to just pop in and ask them to order the book, they can absolutely do that for you. And then you're putting money into your local economy versus a global conglomerate. So that is my PSA about ordering your book. Also, I'm sure there's extra information on your website, so definitely take a peek there. Is there any other way that you would encourage folks to kind of get in touch with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I've recently started using LinkedIn, so that's kind of new. but also Facebook, Instagram, email.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
you're
In Psychology Today, you can see the other stuff I've written. I'm kind of all over the lot. I talk about disability, parenthood, pain, healthcare.
Yeah, you have a wide range of topics that you cover, which I think is great, right? It just, again, makes you versatile to support others if they're looking for content or information of things that are, in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. Or ADHD. I don't know. My husband and I, we joke about this because we're both kind of like, flitting here, flitting there, because we try to stay active. And but it's like, okay, one thing at a time. What are we going to focus on?
Yeah, you and me both. I feel like, there's a lot of ADHD. I think it's great. I think now that there's this resurgence of people recognizing that ADHD is an actual thing that impacts people. Like, that is a whole other topic of discussion, but it's kind of exciting to see, because I feel like it's validating for so many people who've been struggling and been dismissed throughout the years,
Right. And that it presents differently in females, that we're more like quiet and we'll kind of keep things to ourselves. I'm not saying that I had this diagnosis, but I might, I don't know. But anyway, it's not the hyperactivity part. It's like the chill, like kick back kind of.
Yeah.
But thank you. This has been fun. I really enjoyed this conversation. This has been exciting. I mean, writing is such an emotional endeavor, like putting it out there. It's therapeutic. It's fodder for conversation and more discussion. So I'm really interested in people writing reviews as well, because I want to know what people think.
It's great. It's a great call to action. So yes, absolutely. And reviews just make everything better. So, and I think it's hard because we think of like, oh, it's going to take too long to write a review. Like, just go give it whatever number of stars you feel is appropriate. And then even if it's a simple sentence, like, I love this book, or I wasn't a super fan, like, whatever the thing is, I feel confident in your case, it's going to be like, oh my God, I love this book. But, like, just leave an honest review, because what it does is it helps other people find this information. That's how the algorithms work. So it's a great thing to bring up.
Exactly. And, if it resonated with you, tell me how, why, because everyone says, are you going to write another one? It's not my intention right now, but you never know. I mean, I'm going to just sort of see where things go with this,
You never do know. And, and I would say send an email, right? Like, if they really resonated with your book, send an email, because there is nothing more magical than getting an email from a reader who is really touched by your work. And you'd be surprised at how infrequently they come in. And because I think, like, a lot of times we put authors on a pedestal and we think, like, oh, they're too busy to read this, or, oh, they don't really care. And it's like, no, as authors, we do care. Please take that moment to just send something saying, like, wow, your book impacted me in whatever way. So
absolutely. Yeah. Well, when I told my story on the Today Show in 2018, and you can look for that too. It's, you can Google Today Show Trauma Mama. I had all these parents reaching out to me who were secretly holding on to their angst about parenting. And they're like, thank you so much for sharing your story. Oh my gosh, I can't believe what you've been through. And now I feel seen, like that meant the world to me. Like, I was like, there's always that imposter syndrome. Like, it's just little old me, but thank you so much. Wow. None of us think that our stories can impact other people, but we really do. I want other people to share their stories as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good inspiration. And I'm optimistic that you'll have folks reach out to you as well. And that'll be a beautiful day when it happens.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Thank you for your time today. I'm excited. Again, you can buy Chris's book wherever you would like to purchase your book. Chris, you want to hold it up one last time before we part? Yes, with your beautiful cover. Yes, love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. I will talk to you very soon. And then for everyone else, I will be back next week launching another book, and I will chat with you all then. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.